I know people say this a lot, and I'm not saying this to get views and get clicks. I'm saying this because I genuinely believe this. This video is probably going to be one of the most important videos that you watch in 2025. And the reason I say that is because I don't think you're ready for what's coming. And what I'm talking about here is AI. And I'm not talking about the typical AI information that people are putting out, because a lot of people are saying you're not ready for what's coming because AI is going to take our jobs and it's going to infiltrate every part of our lives and it's going to take over. We all understand that. We know that's going to happen. AI is coming. There's nothing we can do to stop it. What I'm talking about here goes much, much deeper than that. And these are things that nobody else is talking about, but I feel that they are actually more important than the fact that AI is going to infiltrate every aspect of our lives and take away our jobs and basically turn us into mindless drones. What's about to happen with AI, I believe, is going to terraform this world. And for many of us, I think it's really going to turn this world into a living hell. And I don't say that lightly. And I also don't say that to spread fear or to make this doom and gloom, because that's not what this is about. And I struggled quite a bit with making this video and wasn't even sure if I was going to make it, because on this channel, I refuse to talk about something if I don't think there's a solution. If you've subscribed to this channel and you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll know that my videos usually start out doom and gloom. But towards the end of the video, I try to inspire. I try to offer practical, simple solutions to the things that we're facing in our daily lives. And if I can't do that, I won't even entertain the idea of talking about it. And that's kind of where I was at with this video, because talking about AI and the things that I'm getting ready to discuss with you, I couldn't find a clear way out. And even now, after doing all the research I've done and really thinking deeply about this, I still don't see a very clear way out. But I think there are some things that we can do to combat the situation, to come out better on the other side, or at the very least to set ourselves up in a good position and to kind of benefit from what's coming. And what you're going to see in this video is going to be exactly that. I come from a technical background. When I was working in my corporate job, I was very, very good at fixing things. That's what I did for a lot of my career. And when you have a technical background like that, you get really good at identifying the problem, because the first step to fixing something is identifying the problem. So let's start off by doing that. Let's identify the problem. And I'm just going to warn you up front, there are a lot of problems here, okay? So we're going to go through a lot of problems before we ever get into the solutions, but I think this is very important, because I think everyone needs to understand the implications of what AI is actually about to do to our lives and how it's going to impact us, because I don't think enough people know exactly what's about to happen. And spoiler alert, it is kind of dark. It's kind of bleak and it's not looking very good. All right, so the first thing, let's just talk about ChatGPT. When ChatGPT first launched in late 2022, they had 100 million users, okay? Now, as of 2025, that has exploded into 700 million users. And there are now 5 million paying business users. That's a lot of money. And as you're going to see, there's a common trend here where a lot of this stuff goes where the money is, and we're going to get into that. But the White House has recently announced that their America's AI action plan is, we need to build and maintain a vast AI infrastructure and the energy to power it. We need to build, baby, build. That's what they're saying. And what they're saying is that when it comes to AI data centers, they're always going to need more, because AI is scaling very, very large. It's taking over. And the issue here is that there's I would almost call it the great space race, but this time it's dealing with AI. You have all these competing countries that are trying to master and dominate AI before the other one, because the person who wins the AI kind of takes over. Because when you have that kind of computing power and that much technology, you've just won the game. And that's essentially what they're doing. They're trying to beat each other. They're trying to win at this game. And AI data centers is the main topic of discussion here. So when it comes to AI data centers, there's a lot of information you need to know. Okay, I went through and I picked up a lot of the current locations for AI data centers just so that you know where they're at. And some of the main ones are Quincy, Washington, Phoenix, Arizona, Salt Lake City, Utah, Northern California, Los Angeles, California, Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, Austin, San Antonio, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, Atlanta, Georgia, Northern Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York, Colorado, Kentucky, and Florida. All right, and there are some new developments that are coming out, some AI data centers that they're building. So Mark Zuckerberg, the guy that owns Meta, he is investing $10 million in an AI data center called Hyperion, however you want to say that, in Louisiana. The footprint is large enough to cover the majority of Manhattan, and that's going to be built by 2030. You're going to hear that date a lot because all this stuff, for some reason, the convergence date is 2030 on almost all the stuff we're talking about. Developers have also announced a $90 billion infrastructure or facility for AI in Pennsylvania, including a $25 billion investment from Google. Pennsylvania is about to get really crazy, and they're not the only ones. Stargate, a project backed by OpenAI, Oracle, and SoftBank, and many, many others, is investing $500 billion for infrastructure over the next 4 years. This is no joke. There's a lot of money that's being funneled into AI. A company called Applied Digital is building a $3 billion, 280 megawatt, 900-acre AI data center campus in North Dakota near Hardwood and Cass County. And for those of you who aren't familiar with power and energy, 280 megawatts is 280 million watts of power. And to put that into perspective, their combined power requirements for all of their facilities in the state are going to exceed 530 megawatts, which for comparison, the city of Bismarck, Mandan, and the local oil refinery only requires 180 megawatts. And just for reference, Applied Digital is also planning a 200 megawatt facility in Iowa and major developments in South Dakota as well. Kansas City, Missouri is building a $10 billion data center slated to open in 2026. And something else that's concerning is that they're touting all this economical growth because they're saying that this AI data center is going to bring in 1,500 construction jobs, which by the way are temporary. So those are only jobs that are going to be there while the data center is being built. But the data center itself is only going to provide 100 jobs. So you have this massive infrastructure, which is going to take up 500 acres, but it's only going to provide 100 jobs, which is not even going to get close to replacing all the jobs that AI is poised to take away. Because the more AI that gets injected into our lives, the more automation happens and the more they don't need humans. So that's less jobs. And we're already seeing that right now. There are a lot of companies that are laying people off because AI can, in some cases, do a better job than us and is more efficient and a lot more cost effective. So they're laying people off, they're firing them, and they're bringing in AI to do the jobs that we would normally do. And oh, by the way, that data center they're putting in Kansas City, Missouri is going to use 500 megawatts of power. Okay, that is enough to power 400,000 homes. And that's just one data center. A company called Tuso and Tallgrass is also planning a campus in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is going to require 1,800 megawatts of power. That's 1.8 billion watts, by the way, which is an astronomical amount. And then they're going to hyperscale to 10,000 megawatts, which is 10 billion watts. And that is enough to power 8 million homes. Okay, that's a lot of homes. Vantage Data Centers is building a $25 million, 1,200 acre, 1.4 gigawatt data center in Shackelford County, Texas. That's enough to power 1.1 million homes. Just one data center. Residents across 5,000 acres in Mason County, Kentucky. I live in Kentucky. All right, so this one hits home for me. They're now being pressured into selling their land for development for a 2,200 megawatt AI data center that's going to rely on coal burning power. Okay, that's something else we're going to get into because all this talk about climate change and carbon emissions and global emissions and all this stuff is kind of going by the wayside, and they're ushering in all of these data centers that are taking up tremendous amounts of power that are also relying on coal burning energy facilities. The need for data centers is expected to increase 9% every single year until at least 2030. There's that number again. All right, so let's talk about power consumption. And this is where it gets very interesting, and you want to pay attention to this because this is going to impact every single one of us. Unless you live completely off grid and you don't rely on power, you're going to be impacted by this, guaranteed. And you're probably already seeing the impacts of this, and you probably didn't even realize it. I know I did. Power consumption for AI data centers is expected to more than quadruple by the year 2030. Overall, AI data centers in the United States were originally in 2018 consuming 1.9% of the US's power, And that's expected to go up to 6.7 to possibly 12% by 2028. And they're also forecasting that by 2035, electricity demand overall is expected to more than double compared to today. All right, so in Arizona, AI data centers consume over 7.4% of the state's entire power. In Oregon, AI data centers consume 11.4% of the state's power. So what does this mean for us? It means that electricity rates could rise 8% on average across the US through 2030 because of increased demand for data centers along with cryptocurrency generation. And for anybody who might live in Virginia, electricity rates in Northern Virginia, which is where an AI data center hub is, could increase as much as 25% by the year 2030. 25%. So if you live there, I feel bad for you because you're going to be paying a lot more for electricity, and there's a pretty good chance you probably already are. And because of all these insane power requirements for these AI data centers, they're also looking at installing more nuclear power. And this is another one that hits home for me because they're buying up land in Paducah, Kentucky. And Peter Thiel is backing a privately developed U.S. uranium enrichment facility there. In Kentucky, of all places, we are going to have a uranium enrichment facility. And as of August 19th, 2025, which I'm actually recording this video on August 20th, so this just hit, this is brand new news, Google lands a major nuclear energy deal to power its massive AI data centers with 50 megawatt capacity. So they're going to be pulling power from nuclear plants in Tennessee and Alabama, boosting the power output from 28 megawatts in 2023 to up to 50 megawatts, which is basically double. And by the way, you may have already felt the impacts of this because increased energy consumption from AI data centers has already contributed to a 6.5% increase in energy prices between May 2024 and May 2025. In just 1 year, 6.5% increase. So imagine when all these data centers, these ones we're talking about here, start standing up, how much more energy consumption they're going to have and how much our prices are going to rise because of that. And according to another recent article, AI's soaring energy consumption is causing skyrocketing power bills for households across the United States, reporting spikes in energy costs up to 36%. Maine and Connecticut are reporting increases of 18.4% and 36.3% respectively. So if you live in those two places, let me know in the comments below if you've experienced rising energy costs, because it sounds to me like you probably have, and you probably didn't know it was from AI data centers. And when we're talking about AI data centers, we also need to talk about the energy companies, because energy usage for data centers has shown a compound annual growth rate of 7% from 2014 to 2018, increasing to 18% between 2018 and 2023. And now, in the current day, ranging from 13% to 27% between 2023 and 2028. And to keep up with demand, all of these energy companies are relying on more fossil fuel plants to produce this power. And that moves us into the next topic, which is greenhouse gas and carbon emissions. Okay, so Google alone has increased greenhouse gas emissions from AI data centers by 48% since 2019. Again, like I mentioned before, all this stuff that's shoved in our face every single day, telling us we're the problem and we're the reason that the planet is being destroyed and we're the reason for climate change and global emissions and greenhouse gas and cow farts and all these things are causing all these problems, yet they're building all of this AI infrastructure that is relying on this power that is relying on coal-burning fuel, and somehow with these data centers, they're not a problem, but we are. Everything else except for what they're doing, where the money is somehow the problem. And that's the common theme here, is that nothing else matters except money for these people. They're doing all this stuff, they're putting these data centers in place, they're scaling up AI because it's all about money. It's all about profit and greed and control, which is something else we're going to get into. But that's what all this stuff is about. That's the name of the game when it comes to this. As a matter of fact, there was a recent article that highlighted this, talking about Amazon trying to reach its net zero carbon emissions by 2040, and Google also trying to have the same goal but trying to reach theirs by 2030. But now they're saying that with the rise of AI, they don't think it's going to happen. So again, all these agendas and all these narratives that they're pushing, they're somehow falling to the wayside now that all this money is involved, now that AI is involved, because AI is more important apparently than saving the planet, according to them. Because many of these AI data centers, and I would say most of them, are using more power than entire cities, driving up the cost of energy and also driving up carbon emissions, obviously, if they're relying on coal burning fuel. So AI data centers are quickly becoming one of the world's leading contributors to greenhouse gases, pollution, and carbon emissions, yet they're investing billions of dollars into them. But you would think that if we were really in the midst of a global climate emergency, it would be a little more important to maybe come up with more sustainable energy sources or scale back on the amount of AI infrastructure that they're putting in. But instead of doing that, they're going full steam ahead on this stuff, which to me is very telling. And it tells me that this is all a facade. And it was never about the climate. It was always about money and power and control. And since we're talking about data centers and we're talking about the environment, it also makes sense to talk about water, because our global leaders have already said that water is going to be the next global crisis. Now, I think they probably saw this coming, and that's the reason they said that. And they have told us that water is not a right. It is a commodity, and they are going to monetize it as such. So what does that mean? It means that our access to water is going to be more restricted, and it means that water is going to cost more. And to really highlight the amount of water that these data centers use, because it is an astronomical amount, Phoenix, Arizona, for example, uses 177 million gallons of water per day. Microsoft's water consumption requirements increased 34% from fiscal year 2021 to 2022. Google consumed 5.6 billion gallons of water in 2022. So that was 3 years ago. You can only imagine how much higher it's been since then. Meta consumed 1.29 billion in 2022, and it is expected to keep climbing every single year. And another big problem is that these mega corporations that run these data centers, they're getting price breaks, while the rest of us are stuck paying astronomical prices for water, which is something that should be a God-given right. But somehow we're being priced a lot more than they are. So here's an example of that. In Arizona, Google worked out a deal with the city that allows Google to pay $6.08 per 1,000 gallons. But the residents there are stuck paying $10.80. And rightfully so, they're very upset about that. And the problem here is that when these resources are stressed, because they are limited resources and they become scarce, it gets regulated and then it gets tightly restricted. And the price obviously is going to go up because of simple supply and demand. And believe it or not, they're already shutting down water to certain farms across the country, and they're taking water from those farms and they're funneling it into these AI data centers, because somehow that's more important than growing food. And just as a prime example of this, a $750 million Meta data center moved into Newton County, Georgia, and the water taps at Beverly and Jeff Morris's home went dry in less than a year, because the data center basically ran the wells dry. It ran the underground aquifers dry. And that is a horrible thing, because like I mentioned before, water is it's not a scarce resource, but it is a limited resource. There's only so much of it. It doesn't really disappear because it goes back into the environment, but when you're sucking it out of the ground and the communities in those areas rely on that groundwater, that's a big problem, because it is not readily replenished in the ground like it is in our environment. And when the data center is sucking the water out faster than it's being replaced, then you basically have no water. And in that area, Newton County, Georgia, the wells are being damaged and the local cost of water has skyrocketed. And that's what we're going to start seeing across the country. And as a matter of fact, they're now saying that we're on track to be in a water deficit by the year 2030. There's that number again. And the rates have increased by 33% when the average rate increase is usually 2%. So what does that tell you? It means water is going up substantially, just like electric. And that data center in Newton County, Georgia, it only uses 500,000 gallons of water a day, which is a lot less than these AI data centers. But 500,000 gallons a day is 10% of the entire county's water. And of course, they're trying to save face, Meta is, because the Meta spokesperson claims that it's unlikely, in quotation marks, that its data center has affected the supply of groundwater in the area. And keep in mind, this is a regular data center. This is not an AI data center. So when we talk about AI data centers, we're talking about a lot more. So here's an example, okay? Newton County, Georgia, the data centers are scaling, and 9 companies have applied for building permits. Some are requesting 6 million gallons of water per day. That is more water per day than the entire county uses. And one was asking for 9 million gallons per day, which is the equivalent of 30,000 households. All right, so as you can see, water and electric are going to become scarce, and the prices of these things are going to skyrocket. And us, the consumer, us little guys at the bottom that aren't asking for these things, we're the ones that are going to suffer from it. And that is a natural transition into the next topic, which is land. Okay, so All of these AI data centers and the companies that run them are buying up huge swaths of land. We're talking thousands and thousands of acres of farmland is being absorbed by these large corporations, and they're getting converted into AI data centers, and that land is no longer used for producing food for us, which is a bad thing because once that land is gone, it's gone forever. We will never get it back. And land is one of those things that it kind of is scarce because it's a very finite resource, and there's only so much fertile land that can be used for agriculture and growing crops and growing food. And another prime example of this is in Louisiana, for example. They are taking away 2,250 acres of farmland, and they claim, oh, this is going to be a great thing because it's bringing in jobs, but it's only bringing in 500 direct jobs. So if you think about that, an area of over 2,200 acres is only providing 500 jobs, but again, they're not talking about the fact that AI is going to take away and has already taken away thousands upon thousands of jobs. So the amount of jobs that they're providing with this infrastructure is never going to replace the amount of jobs that the AI itself is taking away. And speaking of taking away, that's another thing that these data centers and AI is taking away is our rights. So number one, we're losing invaluable farmland that we'll never get back. So that is restricting our access to food. And I would say proper food, because food that's grown in the soil and not stuff that's made in a lab is the stuff that you would want to be consuming. Because all the stuff that's made in a lab, which is the stuff they want us to eat because of global emissions, that stuff is absolutely toxic and is destroying everyone's health. So if we don't have farmland and we can't grow our own food, we're reliant on all this industrial slop. We're also losing access to clean and fresh water, which again, food and water, these are God-given rights. These are things that every single person on this planet should have access to. But apparently, these data centers are more important than that. And another massive way that AI is stripping us of our rights is that this infrastructure is going to become the backbone of everything that we oppose. We're talking facial recognition, we're talking monitoring software, we're talking social credit systems, digital currency, automation that's going to take our jobs away, even Neuralink and self-driving cars. This infrastructure that they're implementing is essentially going to remove all aspects of privacy. It's going to remove the old ways of doing things, and it's essentially going to usher in the new world order, if you want to call it that. It's ushering in our future, and it's a future that is not looking too bright, unfortunately. And as a matter of fact, it is ramping up here in 2025 more than ever. And from here out, from 2025 to 2030, it is only going to get more substantial. And I'm going to put a document in the description below with all of my references, all of my resources, all the stuff that I'm talking about in this video. I'm going to put that in the description below so you can go down there, you can read it for yourself. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with people who need to know. And the people that need to know is everybody, because this is something that's going to affect all of our lives, whether we like it or not. And the way I see it, the only way out of this is to completely rebel and refuse it. But we all know that's not going to happen because there are enough people out there that are willing to embrace this and think that it's the next greatest thing, and they're not willing to give up these comforts. So where does that leave us? Here's my predictions. My predictions are that this infrastructure and AI is going to continue to roll out because that's where the money is. I would also say expect energy prices to continue to rise, as well as water. And also expect water to no longer become a God-given right. Expect it to become a commodity. Expect it to become more scarce. And expect there to be some sort of crisis around water in the very near future, because I really do think that's where we're headed. And due to the rise of global emissions because of all these AI data centers that are being put in place, I would also say expect there to be tighter regulations on global emissions for us, and for us to get blamed for it. And from that, we should probably also expect climate emergencies and climate lockdowns in the very near future. Another thing we should expect is more job losses. And at this point, I think that's a given. And I think most of us have kind of accepted that fact because AI is rolling out and it's replacing us. And due to all the job losses and the trickle-down effect from the rising cost of water and electric, you can probably expect the cost of pretty much everything else in our daily lives to go up even more, which is going to lead to more people struggling to make ends meet. And because there are more people struggling to make ends meet, I would say that you could probably also expect to see an uptick of homelessness, which is a terrible thing, especially now considering homelessness has essentially been criminalized. And perhaps one of the worst things of all is that this is going to create more division. You're going to have a group of people that embrace AI, and you're going to have another group of people that completely rebel against it. And with that said, whether or not you embrace AI or you rebel against it, I do think there's a third option, because those two options aren't very good. And for the people that rebel against it, AI is probably going to phase you out. So consider what other opportunities there are that can arise from this. And while I was researching this, I found some, and that is investing. And this is not investment advice. I'm just going to go over with you what I found, because what I found is kind of shocking. All right. So, I mean, for me personally, I would love to invest into the land that is around these AI data centers, because the cost of that land is skyrocketing. Just like everywhere else where there's large infrastructure going in place, the land value always goes up. So investing in land around those places would be ideal. And that would be phenomenal, because your return on that is going to be very, very high. But because we already know where these AI data centers are being put in, the land values have already gone up. And it's priced most of us, the average Americans, out of this land. But there was something else I uncovered while I was making this video. So at the time of making this video, the tech and AI stocks fell substantially, okay? And there are investors currently, right now, as I'm making this video, selling off their stocks because there is a sustainability concern over the AI boom. They essentially think that there's a bubble, and that bubble is essentially going to pop. And when it pops, the stocks are going to fall, and basically the bottom is going to come out of them, and everybody's going to lose their money. So all these people that have bought all this stock in AI and all the tech around it, they're selling off their stocks. And additionally, the researchers at MIT's Project Nanda said that 95% of companies they studied are getting no return on investment. And Sam Altman, the creator of OpenAI's ChatGPT, also just told reporters that there is an AI bubble and that it's likely to pop. So I believe this is a psyop. And I believe it's a psyop because of all the stuff I discovered while I was making this video. I think that all these people are strategically spreading fear so that the bottom does drop out, so that they can come in and gobble up all the stocks at a very low price. And then it is only going to rise, because again, all this stuff I just described in this video, this is all actively happening. If they did not see a future in AI, and if they did not think there was money in AI, they would not be investing billions and billions of dollars into the infrastructure to scale up AI. So their actions are completely going against what is coming out of their mouths. And at this point, I think that if their lips are moving, they're lying, because on this same day, at the time of making this video, there are also numerous articles coming out about all this infrastructure that is being put in place. So at this point, I think it's more important to follow the actions of what these people are doing and not the words that are coming out of their mouths. So what I am doing currently is I am watching all of these stocks that are dropping, and the ones that get very, very low, I am buying. I am buying as much of them as I possibly can, because the way it's looking, based off all of this information we just talked about, is that this stuff is going to scale exponentially to the moon. And I don't think there's really any limit on how much it's going to scale. And that's what I'm betting my money on. I'm betting it on the fact that they're doing this intentionally. They're saying these things so that they can tank the market, and they can come in and take away more from us than they already have. Because if you look at the data and you look at the exponential growth that these companies have already experienced, and not just these companies, but the energy companies and the contractors and all the other people that are involved in standing this infrastructure up, it has grown exponentially. We're talking 4, 5, 600%, in some cases even more. And with all the stuff that's on the horizon, it's only going to grow even more. And I think that is why they're saying these things now, and they're tanking the market at this very moment, because from here on, it's going to grow much faster and much bigger than it has previously. So I think they want to stick their greedy hands in there and snatch up as many shares as they possibly can at a lower price, so that when it does scale, they come out on top. So why can't we do the same? And that's where I'm hedging my bets. That's exactly what I'm doing, and that's how I plan to benefit from all this. And again, this is not investment advice. I'm just telling you what I'm doing, because I'm somebody who never invested, and looking back, I realized how much of a mistake that was, and I'm trying not to repeat that same mistake. And I'm putting my money into things that could potentially have a higher earning potential than my money sitting in a savings account that doesn't really earn me anything. And don't get me wrong, because for me, this is a moral dilemma. I don't agree with a lot of the stuff that AI is doing, and the last thing I would want to do is support an industry that is going to make our lives harder in the very near future. But if AI is coming and there's nothing we can do to stop it, and it's going to have all these negative impacts on our lives, we might as well do something that is going to allow us to benefit from it. So I would encourage you, do your own research, form your own conclusions, and if you think AI and all these things we're talking about are going to impact your life in a negative way, think outside the box and see if you can find opportunities where you can benefit from these things, because it can't be all bad all the time. There has to be a silver lining. And of all the things I dug through, this is the best one I could come up with. So again, I'll put a link in the description and the pinned comment below with all my resources, all the information that I used to make this video. Be sure to check that out. Like this video, comment, share. Let's get the word out there about this stuff. Let's make sure that more people know what's coming.